either way. That indicates massive stress in the silver market. All of these things are pointing to silver, including breaking right there. It's right at the breakout point of a 45-year cup and handle. It's broken through a falling wedge. Everything technical, everything in terms of the LBMA, the supply, the delay. The London Metals Association is a T+1 market where T is the trade day, +1 to settle. On the third day, the bar should be moving. They've been as delayed as 8 weeks, citing a shortage of manpower and trucks. But as we heard, they have 155 million ounce free float. David Jensen does an amazing job pointing to the LBMA statistics, and he says they trade as much as 1.9 billion ounces a day on paper. 1.9 billion with 155 million backing it. 1.9 billion ounces would be 3.5 times annual global mine supply, and in this case, over 12 times the float.
There are 1.9 billion ounces of silver traded on paper every single day, backed by just 155 million ounces in physical supply. That's 12 times leverage, a ticking time bomb. Now ask yourself, why is China flying across Latin America to buy raw doré bars directly from miners, while US banks are 8 weeks delayed on deliveries? Andy Schectman says this isn't a mistake. The West is letting fake silver collapse, draining COMEX and London, all to rebuild trust in the dollar using physical gold. A gold peg reset disguised as national security.
When you realize that most of the currencies that are measured against the dollar, John, have been lowering rates. And since the US has not lowered rates, the currency in a normal situation should be rising, not falling, as we've seen. Now, this is an ominous sign because if rates remain high, even though they're historically low right now, the government's expenditures for interest will continue to skyrocket and could cause this massive crash that everyone thinks is coming to happen. But if rates are lowered, it will massively increase and ramp up inflation, I believe, far faster than anyone is anticipating. So, yeah, I do think, and I think for the people who are expecting things to change, any form of a reset, whatever that looks like, I think the hard part is realizing that these things don't happen in a nanosecond, that they take time. And to your point about Trump, I wonder myself all the time, is he purposely trying to undermine the economy and the dollar with deficits, massive increase in spending, where Doge says here's $2 trillion in savings, and yet Congress can only agree on 800 billion or 80 billion, that's 38 hours of trading or spending by the US government. But with deficits, with debt, with inflation, and we're driving away our friends with unreasonable demands and tariff threats. Just try and understand Triffin's dilemma for a moment. Read about it and you'll understand that we will always have trade imbalances, always. That's part of being the world reserve currency, Triffin's dilemma. And so when you realize that it is the world reserve status that has enabled us through the world taking our dollars for their goods that we create out of thin air, and worse yet, putting their reserves into treasuries, it is that privilege that has kept goods that we buy at Walmart and Target cheap. It's kept our asset prices high. It's kept interest rates low. And I think what he's doing is pushing back against this system, which even Vice President Vance has written on White House letterhead about Triffin's dilemma, saying maybe being at this point of the game, the world reserve currency isn't such a privilege. Are they trying to do this, to your point? Certainly, he's not doing things the way that I would, albeit I would still vote for him again. I think he is incentivizing, if you would, what appears to be some sort of a currency reset, for sure. Now, does that mean to reset the whole system? That I don't know. With all of the gold that is imported back into the United States recently, I'm wondering if his intention is what Judy Shelton talks about, and that is to sacrifice the dollar because our inflation is out of control, our spending is out of control. And, they tell us it's 3% inflation. John Williams of Shadow Stats will say it's 11, based upon the way it used to be measured. But if we continue to lower rates, what he wants, then inflation will really get out of control. But we owe $28 trillion, John, in 3 years in treasuries that come due. We take in $15 trillion in revenue from taxes. He wants to lower taxes without lowering spending. That's a big problem. So how do we pay off just the treasuries that come due in 3 years? We're halfway there. That doesn't take into account the $3+ trillion a year in deficit spending. We're 25% of the way there. And that doesn't take into account any discretionary spending like military. This is a situation where the only way that they'll keep the ball up in the air, in my opinion, is to back the U.S. Treasury with gold, like Judy Shelton talks about, her 50-year Treasury idea, which she told me flat out on this show that you will issue them on July 4th, 2026. It's the only way that you could replace the high interest rates that would be needed to attract demand in an asset that's losing demand, in a country that's inflating its currency. But that blows up the system with high interest rates. If you do that, you blow up the banks who are under capitalized and over leveraged, the insurance companies that are loaded with treasuries, and the bond market, the real estate market, and the stock market. They all reset. But if you peg gold to it and have it deliverable upon maturity, as Judy says, well, then you have zero coupon bond, low borrowing costs, because that is what would compensate for the inflation or the interest rate, the gold delivery. And you look at gold, it's doubled the 10-year treasury over the last 25 years. It was up 45, almost 40% last year, the 10-year treasury 4.5%. And this year alone, the 10-year treasury halfway through the year is up 2.5% or less, 2.25%, but the dollar's down 10 or 11. Gold's up 38. That's a 55% swing difference. So I think if you peg a treasury with a very low, if not a zero coupon bond that is deliverable upon maturity, you have low borrowing costs. You can continue to borrow at a low rate, which might enable you to bring back your manufacturing and over time grow our way out of this problem. Because as it is right now, remember, Griffin's dilemma says, because your dollar must be strong, because you're exporting dollars, there's not enough dollars for the world just through trade. Countries sell dollar or their currency to buy dollars, their currency goes down, the dollar goes up, their manufacturing is very cheap. So we send our manufacturing over there, which hollows out our manufacturing, but makes the goods we buy at Walmart cheap. And so the privilege of being the world reserve currency are cheap goods, high asset prices, and low interest rates. But that doesn't work when you are as indebted as we are, when you've squandered this opportunity, this massive privilege of being the world reserve currency. It doesn't work. And so I would say to you, yes, we are very close to some form of a change. The actions that President Trump is doing make it seem as though he's trying to incentivize some sort of a reset. The question is it a full reset or is it a soft reset? Soft reset, in my mind, would be to sacrifice the dollar and have its use just go out with a whimper rather than a bang, in an effort to, in some regards, save the system by pegging it gold to the Treasury to lower interest rates to allow us over time to grow out of this problem by reshoring manufacturing. I know that's a lot to chew on, but it's somewhere in there that I see reality. I mean, I'm not really sure how high it can go. I think it'll go higher than people think possible. But when you hear, the head of TD Securities, I think his name is Daniel Gali or something along those lines, come out and say that he estimates the London Bullion Metals Association silver free float, that would be the stock of silver backing the treasuries, stands at its lowest levels in recorded history. Only to about 150 million ounces or so. That's less than a single day's worth of trading volume for spot silver in London. When you see the lease rates in London soaring as high as 8 or 9%, I mean, I've never seen that before. Those are that's the rate that would cost to borrow silver to cover a contract, let's say, or to short it. When you see that, and look, silver's up almost 35% this year as it is. When you see the commercial banks come in and they last week were short almost 80,000 contracts over 400 million ounces, and they built that position at 37.50. So anything above 37.50, they're bleeding at over $400 million per ounce, per dollar. They would be losing over 400 million. So roughly 38.30. So they're down about 80 cents. They're down $350 million on that trade. When you see the fact that yesterday there were 0 shares of SLV to borrow, to sell short. I've never seen that before, ever. Telling you that the market is getting very, very tight. When you see the exchange for physical fee surge by almost 250% in just 2 days, that's the cost to swap silver from a futures contract to physical or physical to futures, either way. That indicates massive stress in the silver market. All of these things are pointing to silver, including breaking right there. It's right at the breakout point of a 45-year cup and handle. It's broken through a falling wedge. Everything technical, everything in terms of the LBMA, the supply, the delay. The London Metals Association is a T+1 market where T is the trade day, +1 to settle. On the third day, the bar should be moving. They've been as delayed as 8 weeks, citing a shortage of manpower and trucks. But as we heard, they have 155 million ounce free float. David Jensen does an amazing job pointing to the LBMA statistics, and he says they trade as much as 1.9 billion ounces a day on paper. 1.9 billion with 155 million backing it. 1.9 billion ounces would be 3.5 times annual global mine supply, and in this case, over 12 times the float. And then they get all these deliveries, and sorry, we can't move it in 1 day because the Bank of England doesn't have enough in the way of trucks or manpower. We're 8 weeks delayed. That almost is that break, that default. I think the commercial banks realize this is an existential threat. I think this is a game that has been exposed by the big players around the globe, India, China. India and China alone are buying so much gold and silver, it's ridiculous. And India's bought about 900 million ounces in the last 5 years of silver. That's more than the LBMA has total. And when you talk about, remember, most of the silver in the LBMA belongs to ETFs like SLV, who's controlled by BlackRock and JP Morgan. There's so much that you can look at that point to silver really being on the verge of exploding. And silver, China, I just confirmed this last week. China is flying all around Mexico and Latin America, Peru, and buying doré and concentrate directly from the miners, and have increased their buying from artisanal miners all around the world, from small miners. They'll buy everything that they can sell because this disintermediates the marketplace. So they join in with the Western banks in shorting the price on COMEX, and then they go all around the world. And they buy right from the miners, doré, which is a crudely refined bar. They buy concentrate, which is a byproduct of that refining, and it's like a sludge in a jar, and they send it back to China and refine it themselves. Or they buy it directly from Mexico, as Vince Lancy says, long before it's even called silver. They're just buying the doré, and they refine it themselves. They're the second largest producer of silver in the world. They're doing the same thing with gold. They're the largest. They're buying up everything they can get in commodities. And silver is probably the most undervalued asset on the planet. And to see the length at which a country like China, who produces second most in the world, flying all over the place and buying doré and concentrate, paying double what the West will to ship it back and refine it, should tell you all you need to know. But then you see the second largest delivery in the history of the COMEX market on the May contract. Huge amount in the June contract. Huge amount in the March contract. Month over month over month, we're seeing massive deliveries into the United States. Who's buying it? Who's taking possession of it? It's a lot deeper than tariffs, I can assure you that.